Oh, there's nothing like in post-All-Star break beef between a player that doesn't even play anymore and a guy who's traded, all kinds of stuff. And it
guy who probably shouldn't play anymore either on the other end of it.
Hey, welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast on a Tuesday alongside Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna, as always, producing the show. All of you in the chat. Gavin jumped right in. Carry me to the end of the workday, fellas. Gavin, we got you. No worries, because we're excited to talk about the Sixers and the final 28 games of the season as we get ready to come back for the second half of the season. A lot of questions, and I mean a lot of questions as we get ready to walk into the start of the season.
Hey, wait.
Second half.
First of all, I see Parth in the chat.
Parth,
who called out Devon by name, became a diehard. Shout out to Parth.
Shout out Parth.
Joined the Discord and said, "Where is Devon?" And that's a great question. Where is Devon? Is Devon ever going to join the Discord?
Parth, I'm right here. I am right here. I have not joined the Discord yet. I was talking to the guys about it before we walked in here. I'll get it done after the show.
You said that 5 days in a row.
I don't want to hear it. Parth, I will make sure that it happens.
He'll make sure it happens.
And everybody else,
I'm doing this
for you.
I'm doing this for the team. I don't fold under peer pressure, so that's not it. I'm doing this for the team. But Parth, thank you for joining, and let everybody else know that they should do the same thing. And see a surprise when I step in there. So bring everybody in, Parth, because it's going to be fun. But look,
it's disgraceful.
Cut it out.
We're going to have a Derek and Kyle versus Devon beef on the podcast.
Not like JJ and Pat. I'll tell you that much. We'll get to those guys a little bit later. And of course, just talk about so many things here as the start of the season. We know that many of you are super excited about the second half because there are a lot of questions. We're going to learn a lot about this basketball team with no Joel Embiid. And still the question is of when are these other players that have missed games due to injury going to be back on the floor? Hopefully they will be back by Thursday, if not Friday, when we're at the arena for our takeover at the arena. We'll tell you about that in a little bit. But there are a lot of questions. And Kyle, there are a number of questions that we as a man, they have a ton going
will
forward.
Devon ever join the Discord?
I will do a sign up. But the third.
That's being generous with the star. But yes,
Sure.
the third guy
that we know of his entire Sixers career, but where we've seen up, down, up again, and down again.
Two different.
With that, no way they did. And then he said, Kyle, in order for this to happen, 28 games, staying in the top six, which we'll talk about, where we're looking at him as a 20-point per game scorer and being a focal point of the offense.
Well, and so here's what you and I, all of us were discussing at points during the last week as we prepared to do this. They need that guy, but I think when you've seen how things have gone for the Sixers without Tobias Harris, how they've played, how the offense has flowed. Flow is a word that Tobias loves to use at any given time. Are we down again? Are we having internet issues around here?
I got it. Yep.
You too. Devon's going to have to get in there and just be our server guy. I know Derek doesn't want to do that. That's his former job. Tell our people to hit refresh is what I would say.
Yeah.
So once you guys come back and you're ready to talk about this, Tobias needs to step up while also kind of blending into what they're already doing without him. And therein lies the problem. Tobias is not a blend-in guy. He's I get to my spots, I do what I do, you throw me the ball, I'm going to be that multifaceted scorer, the mid-post guy, the mid-range scorer. He loves to say the assassin or whatever.
Yeah.
Tell
everybody about me. Remember when he said that?
And then he immediately stopped shooting threes and making them at a high clip.
Yeah.
Regardless, the thing that jumped out when he sat out and they had this banged up lineup, and you bring Buddy Hield in, who Buddy Hield is just a up-tempo, fast-pace, quick decisions type of player, whether that's shooting, whether that's taking a guy off the dribble, or just swinging the ball, getting it to a teammate who's open. Tobias is not that guy, and he needs to come back and understand that without Joel Embiid, that's how this team has to play. There is nobody, and this is not disrespecting Tobias, who's even if he's overpaid, a very good, very talented player. he needs to understand that nobody is Joel Embiid on this roster, and there is no reason to play slow it down, ISO, mid-post nonsense when you can get better shots and play better offense by not doing that.
The one thing, as you talk about him being a scorer and what he thinks, I've always said this, and I think it's fair to say this because, look, we're not in the NBA. We talk about it. We see him. He can average 20 in this league. He has. He's a professional scorer. They're the tiers of the professional scorer that we talk about in the NBA. When you look at Carmelo Anthony and Kevin Durant and so many of the players that are true professional scorers to that level, right? Where they are those guys that are they're killers. Tobias Harris is a very good scorer in this league, and don't ever let him fool you in believing that he doesn't want the same shots as Joel Embiid or Tyrese Maxey, because he absolutely believes that he is on that level. The problem is his blending. He allows himself to be taken out of what they do of the flow of the offense. There are times where we've talked about it before where there were people yelling at me when I first got back saying, you don't ever want Tobias Harris taking the ball out of Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey's hands. Sometimes you do. If he has it going and he is rolling in that way, it's a bonus to have a third guy playing at that level where you know the other two are going to get theirs. You need him in that position to feel the exact same way of getting his. And he dropped 33 and 28. I always run the numbers off. 25 and 27, 23 that he was having, and they were playing well. Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey were giving Tobias Harris the ball because he was rolling at that time. And that was the assassin that he told us about last season. That's the guy that needs to come back. And the one thing that you mentioned now, having Buddy Hield, having a chance to show everybody what he looks like, minus Embiid and minus Harris as that second scorer to Tyrese Maxey, that looked damn good because he was aggressive. He was looking for his. He wasn't afraid to go to the basket. He wasn't indecisive with his decision-making as a playmaker or as a shooter or scorer. And that's what you want from that other player, whether it's Tobias Harris or Buddy Hield. So if he doesn't shape up and shape up fast, that can be taken away from him very quickly if and when Joel Embiid does, in fact, get back into the lineup. And then he's going to have a problem where he's back to being that fourth scorer or that fourth option, where he certainly feels like he's much better than that.
Well, I'm questioning whether this is going to be seen by anyone ever based on our comments in the chat and our current internet issues. And Derek is in full network engineer mode over there. I don't think he's looked up
Two-man
from
show.
his computer.
All right.
To be fair,
over the last 10 minutes.
The first couple of minutes, I was looking down at my computer because I was generating a wanted poster for
And
Devon Givens on
perfect.
Discord.
So you broke the internet. It's your fault. I'm
But the
blaming
last
you.
5 minutes has been looking into, yes, the stream. But I guess my question is, what even is Tobias Harris's ideal role at this point? Like, he's not going to be a third highest, like when everyone's healthy, he's not going to be a third highest usage player. That's going to be Buddy, right? I assume that's going to be Buddy. In part because I think they need his shooting, and that'll open things up for Joe and Maxey. And in part because Buddy
It's a
just
good
has
question.
a
I
mentality.
hadn't thought about that because, we have looked at Buddy as like, oh, his usage is high because everyone's out, but also he was their big acquisition.
I think his
and
usage is going to end up being
offensively
high
deserves to
because
have
he
a lot
fits.
of, yeah.
I think like JJ, people would be like, oh, they're using JJ too much. Well, no, JJ's skill set fit perfectly.
Yes.
So I think there's going to be a little bit of that with Buddy. I think you could see like a 15% usage rate Tobias Harris in the playoffs. And that's in part because Tobias Harris hasn't necessarily rose up and met the moment in the playoffs, and in part because his skill set should be the fourth option when everyone is healthy. Look, to me, what I need from Tobias is over the next couple of weeks to steal some wins. We've been talking about it a lot. They need to get to that 14 number, 12 left. They need to reel off a couple of wins here over these next, 8 and 15 is the bare minimum they need to get to give themselves a chance to stay in the top 6. 8 and 15 over the next 23. Certainly doable, even in a tough schedule, but they need more from Tobias. They need him to be aggressive. They need him to be playing well. And he's certainly capable of having a 3-week stretch where he looks really, really good, but they need it to line up right now.
Well, we have Jonathan Chen with a super chat who says, I'm donating to the Fix the Live Stream Fund. This is, like anybody who listens to this later, audio only, is going to be like, what are these bozos talking about? So we have to be cognizant of that. But
so it will be there.
But thank you to Jonathan for that. Yeah, the problem with Tobias is the same problem that he's always had, is he if you optimize the team around Tobias or say, hey, we're going to give it to Tobias constantly, you let him operate from the mid post, he can be an efficient, if high usage player. And that'll help you out in situations where you're down guys, you're in a pinch, saying, hey, we don't have a true star tonight, or maybe we have someone who's younger and developing as the main guy. So sort of like a Tyrese Maxey, but I think Maxey is above that spot at this point. That's where Tobias has value, like that Clippers team that the Sixers acquired him from, when it's him and Gallinari and Lou Williams, where there's no real alpha dog, but he can step up. That's a good spot for him. They have enough talent on this team to go out and win. I think we'd all sit here and agree on that. They should be playing a free-flowing, ball-moving, spread the floor offense, right? Like, we sit here now, and I know it's just one guy, but if they're all healthy, the addition of Buddy Hield has made it so they have a ton of shooting, right? Between Maxey, Buddy, Melton, Batum, Tobias when he feels like he can shoot, Kelly when he's having a good night. I know Kelly, the numbers are mediocre, but he's a willing shooter. There are a lot of guys on this team who will get shots up and hit them at least a decent clip. Maybe not a great clip, but at a decent clip. So if he buys into the role we've always wanted him to play as fans, as media, as just people who observe the game, then they can turn this into a great offense with all kinds of in the NBA. In fact, was like the leader of that entire program, and someone that Nick Nurse said in a recent press conference when he was asked about it, he's the most competitive player I've ever coached. Those suggest, and coaching history suggests, that Lowry is probably not coming here and just playing a 15-minute, you're the backup point guard type of role, right? Like, I think, and this doesn't mean that it's necessarily wrong, but I think that Nick Nurse is going to try to play him as a second ball handler next to Tyrese Maxey. I think they're going to experiment with different lineups. We've already seen it with Campaign, Maxey, and Buddy Hield, right? The three of them playing together.
And Turk.
And Turk. And Turk. So to see the very small lineups they're already playing, and you hear Nick Nurse say Lowry's a competitor, but also Lowry's a super intelligent player. And that tells you, okay, he probably trusts him to play in these multi-guard configurations. And who cares if they're too small? Who cares if they're giving up some things? Kyle Lowry will make it work because, again, to that point I was making about the amount of shooting they have on the team now, they got quite a bit. And Kyle Lowry is contributing to that. He's been a high volume, ready to fire catch and shoot player for a lot of his career. So I think he might end up playing him too much. It's too early to say. Maybe he gets rejuvenated coming home. He wants to prove something in this big role he could be afforded. Lowry, right to the moon. I don't know. But my concern would be that Lowry looks like the guy he was in Miami, which is still a decent player, but not someone who should be playing 25 plus minutes a night. And Nurse, I don't want to say refuses to see that, but still continues to roll with his guy because that's his guy.
The one thing about Kyle Lowry that we've seen, and then that I feel like I know, is that guy comes in and he plays the right way. He comes in and he plays any role that the head coach asks of him, and especially when it comes to Nick Nurse. Now, again, that was a different version. That was all-star Kyle Lowry during that time, and NBA champion, which he came here for a reason to, again, try to become a second-time NBA champion. He looked at this and felt like this was the best situation for him. Logistically, it worked out coming back home. And, of course, the team that they have, there are going to be two versions of Kyle Lowry playing with the Sixers. Pre-Joel Embiid and then post-Joel Embiid. Right now, we have to worry about the pre-Joel Embiid. And that's probably going to be those 2 and 3 guard lineups that you're talking about, because he has to get creative, Nick Nurse does, with how he wants to do things. And you never know what it's going to call for at the end of the game with what lineups he needs to have out there.
Going to have to ride the hot hand quite a bit.
Defensive focus? Is it hot hand focus? There's so many different ways that could go. I'm very curious to see how that works, because there's going to be a time, Kyle, that you said he's going to trust him. Is he going to lean on him too much? Don't know. We don't know. There are going to be those games where he's hot. There might be that personal game against Patrick Beverley on the floor on Sunday against Milwaukee where that gets fun, right?
The revenge game.
You talking all this stuff over social media? Let's have at it. That kind of thing. But he will play the right way and do everything that he can to win a basketball game. It's one thing about Kyle Lowry that we do know. And I think Kyle, as you said, shoot him to the moon type of performance right out of the gate. I think you're going to get that burst of I'm home and I can help this team.
We saw it with Marcus Morris, man. He came back and played some whatever his issues are, some inspired basketball.
Yes, he did. And I think there's going to be some inspired basketball by Kyle Lowry once he steps on the floor in that uniform. The first one at home when stepping on the floor, the crowd behind him. He's never done that before. Checked into the game, whether he's starting or coming off the bench, probably coming off the bench. That's going to mean something. And then it's time to play basketball. And he's going to go out there and he's going to want to make sure that he shows up well he's playing in front of his home crowd for the first time, not in a visitor uniform. And I think that's the type of player that you're going to get.
Derek, what do you think about Kyle Lowry? Do you think he can help fix the internet, or is that
he might. He's been he's gonna make a joke.
He went to Villanova.
He did.
He's a smart guy.
Look, he's been around long enough, so he's seen poor internet service before for sure. No, I think like we've been talking about it. I share Kyle's concern. I was actually somewhat listening there. I share Kyle's concern that Nick's fondness for the past and his being knowing about Kyle's virtues might give him too big of a role than he currently warrants. And we saw with Miami earlier, he's not the guy he was. He's not the guy he was even last year during the playoffs. He's not the guy he was 2 years ago. He's certainly not the guy he was when Nick had him. He's still a guy who can, smart defensively, give it his all, make an open shot, cut off ball, things of that sort, make decent decisions. But he's not going. You're just not going to give him the ball and ask him to create out of pick and rolls. That's not what his skill set is anymore. I think he will be a good option. I think he will give you valuable minutes. I think he will fit next to Embiid. He'll probably look a little more natural of a fit when he's finally playing next to Embiid. He'll be fine. I do share a lot of the concerns that Nick might overuse him.
He's going to take some charges, man.
Yeah.
Takes charges on this team. Nobody.
For that.
A 6 foot tall Ersan Ilyasova.
Yes. Yes, he is.
With a lot more the ability to dribble. So listen, Kyle Lowry's still a good player.
Yes,
I would agree with the people who think that he's washed, but that's more a commentary on how far he has fallen. Like at his peak, he was a very, very good player.
Yes.
Now he's a decent player. He's just not somebody that I think should be playing a high volume.
No, if he plays more than 20 minutes, I would be really concerned.
Yeah.
Really
Hall of
concerned.
Famer?
It's a good question. I mean, he made what? Six straight All-Stars. Won a title. And so here's the other part that's very important. He is the most important player in Raptors history, you could argue. Mm-hmm. Like Vince Carter better at his peak. Kawhi Leonard certainly was the reason that they won the title, or the main reason, I should say. Mm-hmm. But Lowry's consistency there, his leadership there, all that. I know people in Toronto value it highly. And if I had to guess, I think he probably makes it. But
I say he's in.
That's also like, if this was a different sport, he doesn't make it. But the Basketball Hall of Fame is generally, and I like that it's lenient and that we get to celebrate more players than like the crotchety Baseball Hall of Fame, where a bunch of guys who are in who never played against anyone but white dudes, and it's like, oh yeah, the sanctity of the game's ruined because Barry Bonds did the same steroids that the rest of the league did. Anyway, I'm not trying to get on a Baseball Hall of Fame.
He's made one All-NBA team, and it was a third team.
Yeah,
I think if we're being honest, probably not. The only reason he's in a conversation is because of that championship.
And the All-Stars.
Yeah,
but just six consecutive All-Star
because
teams.
They count them.
But 6 All-Stars without an All-NBA, without anything even approaching I'd be surprised.
And you say because of the championship. If I'm being honest,
I don't sit there and watch every Hall of Famer. Like, I don't know everyone's credentials that required to get in there.
Right.
I would be a little dubious.
Yeah. I think he does. because of the fact that, as you said, we're talking about it because of the championship, but he got it. And he was a big piece of it. He won that with the 6 All-Stars, the 1 All-NBA. I think it's something that, because of the way, as you said, more lenient, Kyle, I think that's why he gets in. You know, he's a part of this run in the 2010s into the 2020s. His name is mentioned with a lot of guys. He may be down the list, but his name is mentioned when we talk about him, because we speak of, I mean, look.
The All-NBA is a good point, though, because if I remember correctly, so one of the controversial, Mitch Richmond's in the Hall of Fame now,
that was the one I was going to bring up.
But he made 1, 2, 3, 4. He made 5 All-NBA teams.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a 6-time All-Star and made 5 All-NBAs. So that's a big point of distinction between him and Lowry. Now, Richmond had basically 0.
No championships.
He's got 1, but he was hanging on with the Lakers in 01-02 when he certainly didn't have much of a role on that team. So it depends on how much weight people put on, one, the championship, but also what he meant to the Raptors, who, for the early part of that, they're still trying to figure out what kind of franchise they are, right? Like, they weren't that old.
Remember
when
he was
Lowry
traded
got
to
there.
the Knicks, and then the Knicks said no from Toronto. You remember that?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, what does he do? He becomes the most important Raptor in the organization. So,
so that's really the question: is how much do you value? Also, making the point, Marshawn Lynch brought up T-Mac.
T-Mac was a wildly better player.
T-Mac also made 7 All-NBA teams, was a multiple-time scoring champ. And T-Mac had a signature shoe, buddy. He is a pretty big deal back in the day.
Someone brought up Grant Hill. The issue with Grant Hill, of course, is he did make the All-NBA teams. He made the All-Star teams. Didn't play long enough.
And also, Grant Hill's college career is a big part of it.
People will remember it's the Basketball Hall of Fame, not the NBA Hall of Fame. And that's why some of those names
for me, I've always been like, it should be real tough to get in the Hall of Fame. I forget who said this first, but it's not the Hall of really good. It's a Hall of Fame. And I value peak performance more than longevity. It's sort of like the Chase Utley versus Jimmy Rollins debate. Chase Utley was the best second baseman for a 5-year stretch. That peak to me is more valuable than a guy having a long career. Kyle's sort of the basketball version of he's had a long career. He was really good for a really long time, but he was very rarely someone you looked at and said, that's a top 20 player. That's a top 15 player, or even a top 6 guard, which he was only voted once in his career. If you're not regularly cracking that, or at least regularly thought of as in that conversation, it would be real tough for me to put you in.
All right, I'm going to ask you guys one quick one before we move on from this topic, just because he is one of the finalists this year. Chauncey Billups, in or out?
I think he's in.
3-time All-NBA, 2-time All-Defensive.
How many All-Stars? About
5.
5. And the championship.
Yeah.
And looked at as the leader of that championship.
And the one who really turned them around on the championship.
Right. So I think Chauncey's in. And to your point, you look at Kyle Lowry.
He is like he's right on the fringe to me.
And to me,
but when you look at that list that they put together, Vince Carter is the headliner.
Yeah.
Chauncey Billups is right under there. So when you're saying that, it's like, Chauncey might get in.
Now, Chauncey, again, but he was top 5 MVP once, top 6 second time, top 10 2 more times. So he's been like thought of as there a little more than Kyle. I think Chauncey probably has a stronger case than Kyle, even though I like Kyle more because he's from Philly.
Okay.
But also, finishing 6th in MVP voting is just like, I would have to go and look at what the ballot was. Like, he could have gotten basically 0 votes.
But I'm
you're the 6th guy.
1/3.
It's more than like Kyle's done. And
I'm not disagreeing with you there.
I probably wouldn't vote for Chauncey either. Like, I think that it should be real tough to get in the Hall of Fame.
And
like,
look, I was like, wait a minute, Mitch Richmond is going into the Hall of Fame?
Right.
But even when you run off the accolades that he has, I'm like, Mitch Richmond still got into the Hall of Fame. So that's why I lean it that way. And Daniel says Devon wants everybody in. No, I don't. I'm just looking at what they do. I don't have a vote. That's what they do. And I think that Kyle Lowry, as part of the conversation, he may not be talked about as a top 20 player or a top 6 guard during that time.
Chauncey Billups that year that he finished 6th in MVP voting got 33 points on the ballot. The 5th place person, which was Chris Paul, got 192. Just for Anyway, we're way off the plot here. The point is
It's a fun conversation, though.
The point is that Lowry, we all believe, can be a helpful contributor in a specific role.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Will Nick Nurse leave him in that specific role? I would say probably not. But how big does it get? Remains to be seen.
What's the final one you want to hit here, question-wise? Because we have a lot.
We still got we got a bunch of stuff. So I guess what I would say is the most important question left. Can they be a competent defense and rebounding team without Joel? Basically hold the fort down for the next. You just think it's straight up no?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straight up no.
Because we've seen it already.
Both of them, or like, can they improve the defense and not the rebound?
Are we saying competent like they might be last, but they're not laughably last, or competent like mid-pack?
Mid-pack.
No. I'm pretty skeptical about both.
You don't think with Melton and Batum, and let's just pretend for the sake of argument that Robert Covington's still a basketball player that exists?
All right, look, if everything rolls right and all of the people who have been unreliable in their health come back and are able to stay in the lineup, there's a chance they might be able to get in the 15 to 20 range.
Okay. Yeah.
But what's my confidence level of everything going right? I don't know. I've been living in Philadelphia for a long time. And bad things happen in Philadelphia, as we know.
And to your point with Melton, like I feel like we've been penciling DeAnthony in. It's also, he's got a back issue. It's not like, oh, he had a sprained ankle and he's coming back. Like a back issue.
If you had to guess, when was the last time DeAnthony Melton played?
January 19th. I don't know. Something. I'm not looking at all. So this is a blind guess.
I'm not even guessing.
15th.
Ooh, only off by a few days.
No, I'm sorry, 12th.
Okay.
And that was only 2 games. Before he missed 3 games, came back for 2, and then has missed since. Before then, it was 2023.
How many total games has he played this year?
They've had 54 games. I would guess 27. Because he's missed time for other stuff.
33.
33. Okay. Yeah, listen, banking on him to be, he's for sure playing, I wouldn't advise it. I'd say that. But if they can keep him healthy, and here's another one, like I just brought that up. Nick Batum, at 35 years old, has a soft tissue hamstring problem. That is like the worst. You don't want to hear any kind of soft tissue stuff for a guy at his age. That is like, you're just going to have a constant nagging problem. Those are the things that when you're younger, you recover better, you recover quicker. You just say, oh, keep him out the 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, and he'll be fine. This could be something that impacts the rest of the year. And if they don't get him back, that is it's a much bigger problem than I think people understand, because I'm trying to be charitable to a lot of guys in the rotation, but they have a lot of bozos defensively. Like, they have a lot of guys who are just kind of space cadet, not high IQ defensive players. And I'm not saying Nick Batum makes up for all of that by himself. He makes up at least a little bit. There's a base level of positioning, communication, cohesion that he brings to the table that helps other guys. DeAnthony, not that same type of player, but as Batum brings the stability, DeAnthony can bring the chaos. He's getting into passing lanes. He's forcing more turnovers, where they're not a team designed to force turnovers in their current state. So are they going to be a good defensive or rebounding team without Joel? No. I'm confident the answer is no. Can they be mediocre? I think so, but it is going to take good fortune and good luck and good health.
Well, if there's anyone who are experts at being mediocre, it is this podcast.
Well, at least Comcast's internet supply for this podcast, I would say that.
Go get those rebounds, Rick. That's it. Put them on the floor.
And that's the case to play Ricky, right? He helps with a couple of those problems.
Yeah. We had a couple of super chats that we have to get in here as well before we get out of here. And go to Daniel first. What are the chances that 3 of the 4 of Maxey, Hield, Melton, and Lowry share the court together during the playoffs? Wow. During the playoffs at the same time?
I'd say slim.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, look, there might be some times where, let's say Melton is back and you have Melton with Hield and Maxey on the floor. I could see that. I don't know beyond that where I would look at anything. And that would probably be in the short stint where Nick Nurse sees an opportunity matchup-wise where he sees something and he says, okay, let me run these three guys out there with Embiid, hopefully on the floor. And then you're looking at, I guess, Tobias or Nick Batum with him in the front court, but not very much.
I could see Nick going wild with a 4-guard lineup around Embiid in the playoffs. I could see him doing crazy shit. I don't know about that specific lineup, but you could see some weird shit.
I wouldn't hate it, especially depending.
It's
on
like basically his whole brand as a coach.
Yeah, what's the matchup? He sees it. Okay, let's run with it. Let's get nuts. So that would be fun though. All right, we have one more from Ash.
And then we do have to get to Doc and.
I think we should just do a standalone and put that out later with the internet right now. I don't know.
Look, knock on wood, the internet is stable right now.
Famous last words.
Ash says, I posted next 18 games in the Discord. I'll be there with you soon, Ash. Assuming Joel is back late March, it's hard to find 8 wins in the next 18. With that, they'll be 7th, 8th seed when Joel does, in fact, return.
We've talked about it quite a bit. This is not a forgiving part of the schedule. If they could flip the end of March and early April schedule with what they have coming up, I guarantee you the Sixers would sign on the dotted line immediately to do that. Because if you're going to get Joel back for any stretch, they would love to have him for this one, where you come right out of the chute against the Knicks, the Cavs, the Bucks, the Celtics. You get a brief break, get to play the Charlotte Hornets. God bless them. Although, as I think you pointed out on the show previously, Devon, they've been playing a little bit better once they made some trades and rearranged all their deck chairs on the Titanic. Then they play at Dallas, Brooklyn, Memphis. Those are easy. But then the Pelicans, who they're going to be pushing for a real playoff spot. 2 straight games at the Garden in New York, which I don't know how that happened in the schedule. Then you go to Milwaukee. Somehow you get another Charlotte game. And then it's the stretch run that we are thinking Joel could be back for. So I agree with Ash. It's tough to find. If you're sitting here and saying on paper, they're not going to win a ton of those games. I wouldn't say they're going to go above 500, certainly. But we don't know what's going to happen with other teams with injuries. We don't know in March who's motivated, who's not. Like that, what people always forget when they look at the schedule in March is that this is generally where motivation goes to die in the NBA. It's a long part of the schedule where the Nuggets, for example, last year, part of the reason Joel Embiid won MVP is the Nuggets went off a cliff and were fucking around for most of a full month. And Joel, to his credit, sees the day, sees the narrative, played great down the stretch, ends up winning the MVP. But weird things could happen. Doc Rivers and the Bucks have been a complete disaster. So they could go out on Sunday and beat Milwaukee at home. They could beat Milwaukee on the road in mid-March. Like, we don't know. The Knicks have Julius Randle out. They have Mitchell Robinson is still out. OG Anunoby has been out. Like, we don't know how many of those guys are going to be healthy for these meetings. So who knows? I agree with you. On paper, it looks bad, but you can never judge, especially in March, the paper schedule.
And then if as Ash said, if they're 7th, 8th over the next 18, looking for that 8 wins, there's still 10 games left. So what happens in those 10 games, not only with the Sixers, but also with the other teams around them that could possibly help them maybe move back into that top 6. All you have to do is sneak into the top 6. It doesn't matter what the record is. You just get into the top 6 and avoid that play-in, and that 10 games will be important outside of the 18 that Ash you talk about. So
yeah, and I mentioned this last time Ash brought it up. He keeps going to 18 because I think it gets him right to an end of a road trip. The next 5 games are like the Clippers, the Cavs, the Thunder, the Heat. Like, they're really important, really tough games. So you're not out of the woods when you get past those 18. I extended that to 23. And I set a very low bar of 8 and 15, and that's a very low bar where if they just clear that bar, they have a chance of holding on to the 6th seed. But that is the minimum, I think, for them to have a chance. So if they can just give them a little bit of cushion and go 10 and 13, you're not looking for them to excel. You're just looking for them to, remain afloat and it's going to be tough. Like, this is a real, like, you hope that maybe the Knicks aren't at full strength, so you have a chance on those games. But every winnable game that you have, like you mentioned, the Hornets playing better basketball, but still one that you can seal. You can't let very many opportunities slip away. That's why, not to relitigate a game that is now 6 days old, that's why the one against Miami hurt, because it was a team that you're fighting for position with, and you had a chance to win.
But you also stole one from Cleveland that we didn't think was going to be there.
Sure, but
no, and winning the 3 in a row like we talked about.
So here's the problem with that, though. Stealing a win only matters if you get the ones you're supposed to win.
Yeah,
otherwise,
when we looked
you
at
stole
that
it
stretch,
and then you gave it back.
But when we looked at that stretch, we
the
were talking about them beating Washington. We were even having questions, could they even beat Washington just because? And I'm with you. Go win those 3 because you did win that second one. But again, you stole it. So was it going to be you win Miami and lose Cleveland, and we're still talking about in the last 3, they're 2-1?
All I'm saying, I understand what you're saying.
I'm just saying for tiebreak, like, because Miami's a 7th seed. That's all.
That's why we talked about the way we did. It hurt.
And I would say the only solace you take out of that game is, and Tyrese said this directly after the game. He said, that's not a game we lost because, guys didn't try or like we had, because there were other games where, they didn't have a lot of guys available, but against Brooklyn, for example, that's just a bogus effort game. And that was not what happened against Miami. That was not enough guys, couldn't execute at the end. And it happens, and it's fine. All I'm saying is that when you steal a game, the value in stealing is that, okay, that's one we didn't think you would get, but you do have to win the ones that are there for the taking. And unfortunately, even though it's close, they gave that one back.
I don't disagree.
Oh, we got another super chat from our guy Vince, who must have been working on the internet the rest of the show. Said Sixers winning 17. Let's say Sixers
17.
going 17-10 in their last 27 games.
Okay, Vince.
All right. They got 28.
Bzz, wrong.
So
Reminder, this is a guy who...
All right.
And just for the record, their record right now going into these final 28 is 32-22.
You want to close with
saying some thank yous?
Some good pals?
Some real thank yous.
Oh, no. Are we doing Beverly and all that?
No, we're streaming fine. We're good.
Yeah.
We're good to
all
go.
right. If the stream's going, let's get into it, right?
All right. Go for it.
So we got
Pat Bev.
We got to start with, here's what kicked. Well, first of all, for anybody who missed it yesterday, and you should go back to Monday's show, we did talk about Doc Rivers' comments that were made over All-Star Weekend that a friend of the show, Yaron Weitzman, reported over at Fox Sports, where Doc essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Doc said that it was really tough for him to take the Bucks job on their toughest road trip of the season. Is Jonathan being serious with the stream sputtering? Because I can't tell.
We just got to power through it. We're 5 minutes into the show.
No. We're not. We're doing a standalone. I'm cutting the mics.
90% of the people listen afterwards anyway.
We're
more than that.
It's over.
So we're just going to record one and then upload it? That's the same thing. That's the same thing as doing it on the show.
No, it's not. All right. People are saying we're back. We're just going to have to power through it. Comcast can, I'm not going to say what they can do right now. So Doc Rivers essentially said it would have been easier for him to take over at the All-Star break, which, we got into that yesterday. You want our thoughts on that? I will
check out yesterday's pod.
Plug yesterday's show. So JJ Redick, here's what Doc Rivers has said, and he goes on First Take today. And JJ Redick, who notably played and started under Doc Rivers, says, "I've seen the trend for years. The trend is always making excuses. Doc, we get it. Taking over a team in the middle of the season is hard. Just like getting traded in the middle of the season is hard for a player. We get it, but it's always an excuse. It's always throwing your team under the bus. They lose to Memphis. Oh, it's his player's fault. Memphis was playing G League guys and two-way guys. Then you look at his quotes over the weekend, and now he wants to take credit for the James Harden trade to the Clippers working out. He wants credit for that. There's never accountability for this guy."
He's right.
So that JJ ends it around there. I didn't watch the full First Take. I'm not going to ever do that. Patrick Beverly, former Clippers player under Doc Rivers, now Bucks player under Doc Rivers, says, "This man, Doc, actually saved your career. Started you when no one else wanted to, and you retire, go on TV and say that." tweets at JJ Redick. JJ Redick's first response, LOL. JJ
Great
Redick's
comeback, JJ.
JJ Redick's second response, Pat, my guy, I had a 4-year offer with player option for the same money to be a starter for a different team. Fuck out of here. Saved my career. Gentlemen, do you have any thoughts?
I am Team JJ all the way. Look, Pat Bev he's been part of this podcast even more than he was when he was here because
Seriously.
of the stuff that he said on his podcast since he has left. And I'm on JJ's side with this one. JJ Redick was already establishing himself again we knew about that stuff after the fact that he had offers to sign elsewhere, and he did just that. And one of the things that bothered me when Doc Rivers was with the Clippers is that everyone else got the blame and not him until he did later when it was time to leave. And for him,
remember when he said he was playing DeAndre Jordan playing Trez because Harden wanted him to?
Yeah,
like he wouldn't even take blame for playing Trez. Like,
yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
What are we doing? He wouldn't take blame for anything.
So Pat Beverly is wrong here. Pat Beverly clearly stands up for Doc Rivers. When he had that 6-man run almost there where Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell were actually winning it, but he was a part of that Clippers team, he loves Doc Rivers for whatever reason that he does. JJ Redick says things that even me as a guy who likes JJ Redick, I like JJ Redick a lot, even for the job that he does now. He can say some things where he's wrong. He's not wrong on this one.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, he has history with Doc Rivers to sit in that locker room just like you did. And his team was better than yours with the Clippers. Yet at that time, they were at odds during that time with the Clippers because of how Doc Rivers handled things, not only in the locker room, but through the media where he would come after them. So here we are again. We get to see Doc Rivers on Sunday when the Sixers take on Milwaukee.
Get to or we have to?
We have to. We have to see him. But I'm on JJ's side with this one. And Patrick Beverly, come on, man. Take it down a notch, Patrick Beverly, because this is ridiculous.
So JJ and those guys, that version of the team in LA, pretty notorious for, I'd say they're one of the more talented teams of the last 25 years to not get it done in the playoffs, right? To not break through that second round wall. And there are a lot of reasons for that, right? Doc is a huge part of it, but to give him any kind of cover, you would say there's a lot of personality clashing, a lot of finger pointing. Chris Paul at that point was still getting accused of like he's got a little bit of, he wears on people, right? Like he's a very hard charging, competitive guy. Certainly so is JJ in his different ways. Blake wanted his amount of control on the team, whatever. Like there's a lot of ego clashing. It's not fair to say that's all Doc, right? And it has never been fair to say when these teams have lost, it's only because of Doc. The thing that has always driven me crazy is that the exact things that Doc gets credit for are the exact reasons his teams have lost, right? Like, oh, Doc Rivers is he sets the hierarchy. Well, the fucking hierarchy in LA went to shit. And that's a big reason why the team fell apart. You didn't win. Oh, he's an accountability guy. Well, there was no accountability for the Sixers. There's no accountability for the Clippers. There's stories that came out about Kawhi is like showing up hours late to flights and delaying team planes. They're working the whole practice schedule around these guys. That's not accountability. The whole reason that was like the sales pitch, like, oh, Doc Rivers is going to come into the Sixers organization and install some accountability for the team. Like, what the fuck coach have you guys been watching all these years? So that's the stuff that drives me crazy. And JJ, to your point, he's seen it firsthand. He's seen like, okay, this is what Doc does in practice. This is what the meetings look like behind the scenes to work with the JJs, the Chris Pauls, the Blake Griffins, the DeAndre Jordans, and then the role players, the Matt Barnes, the Lou Williams, the Jamal Crawfords. They know the ins and outs and all that. And then they hear what Doc says publicly. And for JJ, who, like, look, he's on First Take, and I know First Take goes a certain way. JJ is not a guy who just gets on that show and says anything, right? If anything, he has pretty consistently been the contrast to Stephen A, to Shannon Sharp, to Mad Dog, to all these other guys who they're all talented at what they do in their different ways. But JJ has been the more, I'd say, reasonable, the calmer, the rational side of it. For JJ to go up there and say that, that's not just somebody blowing smoke. That's someone who played for Doc, played in the league a long time, telling you how he feels. And so Pat Bev trying to give him cover through, oh, nobody else wanted you. Like, JJ Redick was a 40% three-point shooter. Even if you were to say, hey, Doc gave him a bigger opportunity and helped out his career in that way, you can't sit here and be like, oh, JJ would have been like out of the, like, to JJ's point, fuck out of here with that.
Well, so to that point, like JJ went from 17 minutes, and this is in Orlando, 17 to 22, 25, 27, and 30 before going to the Clippers. Right. Did he start a lot? No, he was mostly as a six man, but he was trending up, right? To say that he owed him
Stock
his career.
Up. If I had to sign,
saved his career. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But even if, and I don't think this is true, but even if Pat Bev was right, what's the implication? Just because Doc was good for him for his career, he now can't be an honest analyst? Like, there's so many opinions right now in the media that are up for sale because it's expedient for them to do so. Whether that's for access,
protecting relationships with anybody,
whether that's relationships, what have you. There's so many people who are on air or writing things that they fundamentally don't believe or that they don't challenge because it's easier for them to do that. Even if Doc Rivers was great for JJ's career, I want my guy on First Take being truthful with his feelings. So what are you really getting at him for? Like, what's really the criticism here? I think Pat Bev is wrong that he saved his career, but even if he did, quote unquote, save his career, I think it's wrong to criticize him for saying what he truly believes. Even if Doc was a great friend, it's probably pretty easy to read between the lines that he might not be JJ's best friend. But even if that were true, he should be honest with how he's portraying the situation. So I give JJ props regardless.
And JJ's been in a lot of locker rooms with a lot of players. He was here. He still has relationships within locker rooms where he hears stuff. So for Pat Beverly should know that. The same way Pat Beverly goes after what happened with him in Los Angeles after he left, and then going to Chicago and feeling slighted and all of that stuff. Where was Pat Beverly when James Harden was saying things about Doc Rivers? Nowhere.
Well, and Derek brought up an example of Trez. We don't have to, and like that was a Sixers example, but Pat Bev, we can cut out every Clippers example and just use the examples from Doc's tenure in Philadelphia, which JJ was not a part of, by the way. During Doc's time in Philadelphia, he pumped up Ben Simmons' value through the press and talked him up, and then threw him under the bus when it mattered, and then tried to pretend and fucking gaslight members of the media and say, no, that actually isn't what I said. It's like, dude, we were on a Zoom call. That was recorded. That wasn't even like we're in a back room in your office. Like we're all having a conversation and somebody misinterpreted what you said. You were caught in fucking 4K throwing somebody under the bus. That happened. That's one of the main reasons that Ben Simmons wanted to get the hell out of this city is you. That's you making excuses, not JJ Redick. You. So that happened that we all saw. We've all seen what he's done since he left Philadelphia where, oh, James didn't want to do this. Or I thought after the All-Star break, James started playing more selfishly. And we sat here on this show. I know Derek and I did. I think Devon wasn't with us yet. We compared the stats side by side and they're damn near identical. It didn't fucking happen. That's not why they lost. James Harden played the same way the whole year. So this is a guy who he's always looking to blame somebody else. It's never his fault. That's why JJ gets mad. JJ will probably sit there. If you told him, if we had him on this show, you got him on any other show, and asked him if he had a role to play and why the Clippers didn't win, why the Sixers didn't win, he would look you in the eye and say, maybe I wasn't good enough defensively. Maybe I didn't mend this relationship. This communication wasn't as strong as it needed to be, whatever it is. Doc still can't sit here to this day and take accountability for basically any of his failures. I remember him sitting right around when he took the job in Philadelphia and saying, well, if you look back and see like the players who I didn't win with in LA, well, they haven't won anything without me either. Like, fuck off, dude. Just the arrogance that guy has because he got an all-time team put around him in 08,
Boston.
and it took fucking Andrew Bynum and Trevor Ariza being injured for you to win in 6 games. Come on, man. Enough.
And Tyrese Maxey wanted to come
I don't
off
know
the
how I'm
bench.
still mad about Doc Rivers here, but this is enough is enough.
He wanted to come off the bench. Tyrese Maxey did.
I didn't even bring that shit up.
He's a good sport. Pat Bev responds.
He couldn't take accountability for that.
Nope. Pat Bev responds on Twitter. He says, why didn't you take it then? Talking about the other deal that was offered to him to be a starter. You was comfy in your role with the team, and don't just say LA. All right, Pat.
What does that even mean?
I have no
Why would
idea.
You were
not wanna
comfy
go
in
to
your
a good
role with a
role.
team you hadn't played with yet? What?
I don't know.
But the Maxey example is the greatest example, right? Doc had reasons. Like, we all saw how they played without him. We looked at DeAnthony Melton and said, as a guy who's like a plug-in fit and say he doesn't need the ball, whatever, and you unleash Maxey as the 6th man, there are reasons for that. They might not have been reasons everyone agreed with, but you could have led with that. And instead of saying, hey, I see these potential ways to use Tyrese and to use DeAnthony and to argue it with logic and put his name on it, he had to sit there and fucking lie to your face, lie to all our faces and say, well, Tyrese actually asked me for this. He thought it was better for the team. And I continue to give Tyrese credit, despite the fact that he shouldn't have done this.
I agree.
For sticking up for that and saying, like, I'm not going to rock the boat. I care about the team. I'm not going to cause problems. I'm going to do what I need to do to help this team out. But that is Doc Rivers in a nutshell. Stand and fucking handle your business and don't throw a 21-year-old kid under the bus and say, oh, he's the reason I did it. That's bullshit. And that's who Doc Rivers is.
And that's where we end, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, we can keep going because I feel like we're just adding extra time on at the end of the show since the beginning of the show didn't work.
No, I'm just making sure people got their time's worth today.
Honestly, I give everyone credit. There's still a lot of people hanging out after all of the streaming problems earlier. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's cool to see.
Man, that Tyrese Maxey one always got me because you knew it in the moment. You were like, that's not true.
Yeah.
And good on Tyrese to finally say it this season that, no, I did not want and suggest that I come off the bench. We all knew it at the time, and we all knew something was fishy with that. And that's exactly why, because of, as we know, Doc Rivers.
You had this kid calling his mom saying, like, what did I do wrong? This kid who walks in, the hardest worker every day, big smile on his face, and you're asking this kid to lie for you in perpetuity, essentially. Just complete nonsense.
And on Sunday, he took him off the floor after he scored like 8 in a row. So there's that. Kyle, we got a lot of people to thank.
Got
man.
a lot of people to thank.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging around while we were dealing with the technical difficulties. We really appreciate it.
As was already pointed out by both my colleagues here, for you guys to stick around long enough to actually see any of this show after what happened to start it with the technical difficulties, I love y'all for that. So thank you to Marty Bones, to Gavin, who was here bright and early on the show. We had Jonathan.
What up, Gav?
Who was it? I think it was Daniel. Might have had a super chat before the show even began. Shout out to Daniel. Shout out to Jonathan Chen. Shout out to Ash Monroe. Vincent, our guy Vince in the chat. Thank you. Fusion, I saw trying to suggest fixes for the internet during the show. Front running fan base. Smy Guy, AA Ron, Espy, Eric Schmidt, Elaine Bruno, Randy Rubart, Mary Overfield, who I always love to shout out, see her a lot on
up,
Twitter.
Mary?
Got Money Mar.
Money Mar.
He's getting pushback. People saying, you're not even a Sixers fan. We know you're a Sixers fan, Money Mar, and we love you for that.
That's because he thinks the Sixers are done.
We got the hypothetical man. We got Al, the 2-minute warning.
What up, Al?
Who I know we will see at our takeover on Friday against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Hope to see some more of you. If you missed that promo earlier, go to allphly.com, hit our events tab. We'd love to have you with us on Friday night. We've got Misremembered 72. We've got Remo K, Martian Lynch, who's always here with us. We got Bootzilla.
What up, Boots?
Rick Morse. Guys, I'm running out of saliva and breath over here from all the ranting about Doc Rivers. We got Neil Deaver. We got Rick Morse. I think I'm out of energy. We got Devon Givens and Derek Bodner in the chat, certainly.
Hello.
Brian Knight, Lamont
doing,
Wilson,
man?
Coach Lowell Ricketts, who's now a regular. We love you for that, buddy. Who was the Discord joiner today?
That
I'll
was.
tell you who it wasn't.
Who was it? It was
Parth.
Parth. Parth came here. Yeah.
Thank you, Parth.
Thank you, Parth, for joining the Die Hard program and joining our Discord. I promise you I will get Devon to join the Discord.
I'm in.
And on our way out, guys, if you could
If
hit that...
it's not done by Thursday, I'm putting the wanted poster up. It's going on the stream.
Aaron is great. Says we are 100% USDA certified sickos for hanging around for
That's
the show.
right, brother.
Yes, Aaron. We appreciate
And
everybody.
Aaron also just joined the Discord recently. That's more motivation to get Devon in there. If you guys could hit the subscribe button.
Tell the friends.
Hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live.
That was a
And
bad
if you hit the thumbs up button, I will write a strongly worded letter to Comcast and tell them what I thought about our stream going down and intermittent today. Thank you all for being here today. We will be back after Thursday's game.
Thursday. Thank you.
We all silly like the mayor.